I'm Amit Patel. I'm the creative director here and your host. And today I'm thrilled to be having a conversation with somebody who is at the forefront of social innovation. Madelaine has joined us for our conference. We've had numerous conversations over the last couple of years. I've always been blown away by the things that she's working on. I'm going to let her introduce herself, but Madelaine, great to have you here. And why don't you start with saying hello and just tell us a little bit about what you've been doing?
Absolutely, which thank you so much for including me in this podcast. It's a really exciting place to be, and great to have an opportunity to speak to some more people out there. So thank you for inviting me. So I am a multidisciplinary designer, I would say, as well as a creative entrepreneur. So what that really means is I've got a passion for helping people and actually getting impact and putting ideas out there. So that originally started in architecture, looking at environmental psychology and how spaces can affect people and impact people, which led me into looking at disaster zones, post-disaster relief, and finding ways of helping people. And then moving into technologies and products, again to save lives, which brings me to Helm Innovation, the first organization I founded, where I hold my patents, as well as the Cross Design Studio, which is a consultancy where we support more startups in bringing impactful solutions to the world. All of those lessons I've learned through creating those and working in amazing places with amazing people have led me to creating courses through the likes of Estu and the Royal College of Art to help more people in having an impact. Because if I can do it, anyone can do it, I promise.
Amazing. So where I'd love to start is, can you just tell us a little bit about what was the spark when you were kind of, either in school or in university? What was that spark that kind of led you to kind of, going down this path? Was it a different path that you kind of got? What kind of got you started?
So from the age of 4, I started drawing floor plans for my dream house when I grew up, because my dad was within the building industries, surveying. So there were always papers dotted around, and I was very much interested in what was happening there. So from the age of about 14, I started working in an architect's office, doing work experience and actually just having a go. It's never too early to have a go, but also it's never too late to explore new avenues. But what that did for me, it reinforced that university was the right option in exploring and making sure that I had the foundations to pursue a career in architecture, spatial design. However, whilst I was at university, I was invited to Japan to look at tsunami escape routes. So it was an external project brought in. A couple of students were invited over to Japan. You had to apply. It was very competitive, and I was very lucky to be selected. So I got sent to Japan and got to see what design could really do for people and the impact. So what I found was that in response to the 2011 tsunami and disaster, which involved the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear fallout, there were people still 5 years later living in these temporary homes and still suffering from the events that happened. And interventions that were spatial were actually really key in supporting people for the impending threat of future tsunamis and earthquakes. That, for me, was where I started to find purpose. It was away from creating bougie apartments or refurbs of offices that needed a refresh. It was an opportunity to apply my skill sets to save lives. And I feel there's no bigger purpose in the world for me than that.
Yeah. So can I ask, what were you studying at university? What was the degree that you were doing?
So I was studying at the University of the Arts London at Chelsea, and I was studying interior and spatial design.
Okay.
So that was my starting point, as well as very much doing work experience, working with various organisations and being invited to Foster and Partners to do internships there as well too. So that was the foundations.
Okay, great. And so, I definitely wanted to find out more about Helm Innovations as well. So once you kind of went to Japan, you had that kind of the realization, like, okay, this is my purpose. What did you do? So you came back. Just tell me more about what, got this purpose now. What happens next?
I was the anarchist at university. I was doing my final year and they all expected me to do something to do with phenomenology that was going to be really beautiful, that instead I looked at the environmental impact of post-disaster relief and ended up creating a written piece of work that mattered more to me than anything else I'd ever designed, because it came a foundational piece as to why designers should design the way they do, or how they should in the future, looking at almost these toolkit applications, which aligns closer to something within service design potentially.
Right.
So if anything, I just created my own methodologies for being a better designer. And that became my own handbook that I referred to. And at that point, I declined a contract to an architect that I've been trying to get a full-time permanent job at for some years, and said, no, I've just started. And luckily I got headhunted by the Royal College of Art, and invited to take my research there and continue to explore it through a master's degree in information experience design.
Right.
So a great opportunity to continue to figure out who I am, what I am, and why I'm doing it.
Right. What I really like about what you just mentioned, and I think we often say this a lot in all parts of our training, whether it's an individual or with a company, is that the processes, the methodologies, particularly like some of the templates and kind of some of these tools are, as designers, you should be willing to kind of change them and mold them into what's going to work best for you, and always be willing to do that. So I love the fact that you've just mentioned that you kind of started kind of writing your own kind of methodology. So can you tell us a little bit more about, or give us a glimpse, like what did you find maybe wasn't working in some of the process and methodologies you were kind of using at that time, and what were some of those changes you looked to make?
Absolutely. So one of the things that really mattered to me was the research process. So dealing with survivors of earthquakes or disasters in general, a lot of the information I was able to receive was secondhand, or it was through the media, and there'd been this case of framing. Someone had already shown me what I was supposed to see, but captured a small part of a conversation. And for me, that meant I didn't have the full picture, and it left a bad taste in my mouth. And after being sent to Japan to meet the survivors of those earthquakes, it identified that there was real victimhood exploitation taking place in the world, which, of course, I'm sure we all know that, but it highlighted how much it was happening and the impact of it. Those survivors took real pride in the things that they'd achieved after, and the support they helped other people through different situations. And they wanted to do that because they had that insight. And it made me realize that I'm just a small piece of the puzzle that enables them to grow, to build their own resilience. And it's not for me to have ownership. It's for me to become a tool within a bigger scenario, a bigger project, and to find the best way of having impact. So those people that have brought me to this position where I wake up in the morning and go, I'm doing this for them. As cliche as it sounds, I promise you, I have a tick list of things to do for all of those amazing people that have supported me, and to go back to those places and continue to provide for them. Those relationships you build with people are the motivations, but it's a really key thing that defines the way I go about my projects in general.
Right. Yeah, I really, really like that. I think that resonates. That will resonate really well with a lot of the listeners that we have as well. So now, stepping away from those, the methodologies, and you kind of clearly explained kind of your approach. And again, just kind of hammering home that point of purpose as well. Impact. So you've now been chosen, you've kind of carried this forward into a master's degree. Is this where kind of the project started, you started to work on, that became kind of the first project for Helm Innovation?
So there were things happening simultaneously here. So whilst I was doing my master's, I was still exploring the aspects of communicating disasters and what was gained, what was lost in that framing. So one stream I was looking at was involved with something I developed called synthetic empathy. So it was looking at how you create connections between an audience and survivors that is a positive reflection of a situation. It's not about exploitation, but you're not losing the narrative too, which almost sounds like an impossible situation, but was something that I was exploring through multimodal discourse analysis, which is basically just sharing different parts of stories in different ways for people to experience. So whether it's visual, audio, something you can physically touch, giving people a different sense of empathy towards a situation by experiencing it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something that I was looking to explore, which ended up being picked up by the likes of one of the BBC R&D team.
Okay.
And many discussions happened since then, but I'd like to think that some of that research has influenced something.
Okay.
But whilst there was this project it felt almost intangible and so big, I needed to focus on something that felt a bit more hands-on, that had a beginning, middle, and an end. And a short project came in with the likes of Lloyd's Register, the foundation, and they'd brought a brief to the Royal College of Art for some students to do a 2-week hackathon and be given the problem of safety at sea to do with seafarers moving from ship to ship,
Mm-hmm.
and said, there are problems happening, people are dying, what do we do? Here's some information, come up with a solution. And that 2-week project ended up becoming a 5-year business with patents and the rest of it. So that definitely became very tangible.
Yeah.
But it gave me an opportunity to focus on research and focus on design at the same time. So for me, it's always important having different outputs and keeping my finger on the pulse in different areas.
I think what you've just mentioned there resonates so much with, I think, how people need to approach, these kind of projects and what kind of opportunities there may be down. And sometimes it's very hard to even kind of visualize that. And sometimes you don't have no idea, but the fact that you can that 2-week piece of work has become something so much more kind of meaningful and kind of tangible. It's so impressive as well. And like you said, that curiosity and willing to kind of work through that and kind of see where it goes is so important in terms of approach. So you worked on the 2-week project. It was obviously kept going. What was the kind of the stepping stone from it actually now turning into something viable and, essentially starting to become the corner piece of a business?
Absolutely. Well, it started with a team of us students. So we had people that were aerospace engineers and mechanical engineers. And together we came up with these ideas, presented them. And at those presentations, we were given a £10,000 grant to take this idea a bit further. So we had another 3 months until the next date. So creating that prototype, being given a platform to share it with people in industry for them to give feedback, which was also an opportunity for them as the global boat insurers to say, here are some ideas, what do we think, to their networks. Thankfully, they said, why has no one done this before? Which was a great piece of feedback for us to say, fine, we'll do it then. So Lloyd's Register asked us to turn this into a business. And within the team, I was very fortunate that the team asked me to be CEO, knowing that I had a passion for this life-saving projects. They said, go on, Mads, have a go and see how far we get. And there's been different interventions that have happened along the way. It's been a very long journey, and talking about slow and fast innovation, lean startups, all of those kinds of things. There's so much in there. But those milestone moments were being given an opportunity to take part in a business accelerator.
Yep.
I don't come from a business background at all. So making sure that I was surrounding myself with the right people that could give information that I needed to guide me, as well as having people around that were from kind of similar scenarios, trying to figure out what it is, what to do. That was really key. And then being put in that Dragon's Den pitch situation, asking for the $500,000 to invest in my business. Thankfully, they said yes, and we were offered that. However, I said no when I looked at the contract based on the terms of it. Hence why I set up the Cross Design Studio. So that became a milestone moment where I decided not to take investment and to earn it through our service-based consultancy, to be able to feed that back into Helm Innovation and keep as many shares as possible, but also manage my own risk. That's something that, being in the world of disasters, risk is always at the forefront in managing that and making sure there's always an exit strategy and safety in that.
Yeah.
So they were some milestone moments, and it's why it's taken so long. Of course, you could get investors in earlier and move a lot faster. But at the time, I was 21 and there were a lot of things changing in my life. So it was the right decision at that time and I wouldn't change it.
There's so much to unpack there. And I think what's so fascinating, I think we run a lot of incubator programs for universities. We do a lot with student entrepreneurs. And I think just them hearing this story, they would probably want to unpick so much of that. So my question now is, if you were to look back, and I think this was kind of the theme of when we spoke to you, or when you spoke to us at our conference in November, what were some of the lessons learned? And I think one of them you mentioned was surrounding yourself by the right people. I think it's great that you were, not nominated, but the team seemed to trust you to kind of take on that CEO role. I think there's a huge challenge not coming from a business background. So if you were to look back at that journey that you've taken, what would be some of the biggest lessons that you've learned?
I'd say there are some uncomfortable situations that I've been put in as a result of being made CEO. There are some choices you have to make that are things that I was guilty in the past of burying my head in the sand, but nothing changes as soon as you pop back up, funnily enough. So it's been a case of, over the years, leaning into those situations. And if anything, you rely more so on the people around you and the advisors and mentors to ensure that you're making the right choices in those situations. So an example of that being that we had opportunities to sell our patent at one point, or license it. And it was looking at who we would do that with and why, what would be the long-term implications of that. And at one point I was thinking, I just need to hand this over to someone and move on. However, there were adjustments being made to the design that were going to impact the safety of those seafarers. And that did not sit well with me, to know that all of the work we'd done with seafarers in the past, the team that had been involved in creating it, to hand that over and for it to go wrong because those people didn't respect it in the same way we did. I knew it had to be a long-term pursuit to make sure that what we'd set out to do, we did. Hence why I have my tick list of things that I want to work through and make sure I get to. But that was a really key point. You're going to get into uncomfortable situations, but nothing's going to change unless you change it.
Right. And where are you now with all of this? So, how long has this journey been, and where does it currently stand?
Absolutely. Well, we are manufacturing over in Rotterdam with our licensing partner. So there's a great organisation called PTR Holland, who, as soon as we had our first press release through the Royal College of Art, got in contact and wouldn't leave us alone until we accepted a meeting. And they're globally respected for what they do in terms of maritime safety. So, of course, we explored other partnerships and there were some very competitive offers. But as an organisation, we felt that they were a really great match for us. So we've gone ahead and are going through certification and testing to be able to get our products out later this year, with the intention of moving towards it being regulation for all ships in the world.
Wow.
So a really exciting prospect, but reducing risk by 80% in these transfers is really key, because those transfers aren't all autonomous. It's people. It's people that we'd be protecting, and that matters.
And is the team that you're working with today very similar to the team that you started all of this with?
Well, I have my right-hand person who is Josh Chidwick, which I met him through one of the incubator spaces, Innovation RCA. He was working at another organisation and saw me frantically trying to figure out a manufacture process and just became interested. And over the years, he's done amazing work at Helm Innovation, but we've set up the Cross Design Studio together.
Right.
Because the way that we work together, there's no hierarchies. And in terms of feedback and input, it's a great yin and yang setup where he comes from mechanical engineering. So the two of us have worked really well in partnership, and we wouldn't have our product where it is without us two meeting.
Right.
But there are people surrounding that. We have advisors who are very well integrated into the kind of governance systems surrounding the maritime industry. And this organisation over in Rotterdam, they're the experts in terms of the maritime industry. And we knew as a startup to break into that industry is a hard, risky thing to do. So working with a respected partner was the best option, and our product, we have the ability to go to market rapidly. There's a gap within regulation that means that our product could go on ships right now, which is almost unheard of. So working with a great organisation, it gives us an opportunity to save lives sooner. So everyone having that shared goal, that's been the key culture that we want to create.
Yeah. Again, there's so many great points you're making here. I think, again, you've talked about just finding the right person to work alongside you, essentially almost like a co-founder. I think that's a fear that a lot of people face is just even just opening up and talking about what they're working on, let alone bringing somebody into the fold. But also from an entrepreneurship perspective, the fact that you then set up a separate studio to kind of consult and earn the money that can go back into Helm. Tell us a little bit about Cross Design Studio. It's clear why you set it up, but what is it doing today?
Absolutely. So the Cross Design Studio, it's a design consultancy in which we support early stage startups or people that are looking to scale up, looking to reach their first round of funding or investment. But in terms of the design, manufacture process or research, there are things lacking. That's where we come in, where we provide research, design support, as well as that manufacture guidance to be able to give them the tools they need to go for that first round of funding or to apply for grant funding or to be able to get going. So there are organisations we've worked with, one being Expand, who creates 3D printed prosthetics, which she's setting up 3D printing farms in areas where they don't have access to these kinds of things, so that they can print them, bespoke them to those people. So supporting her with design iterations, manufacture process. So she's then gone on to get more funding and expand her business as a result of it. So for us, that's all about social impact. The projects we bring in are very much focused on social impact, sustainability, and things outside of that we avoid.
Okay. You have so much going on, and I think that's when I first met you. I think it was at a workshop at TCS, maybe, that we kind of and obviously we kind of bumped into you again at the Creative Festival, and we've had ongoing conversations. I'm always amazed by how much you have going on. So on top of all of this, you've got Estu. You've gone, like I think you mentioned at the beginning, going back into like education and workshops, etc. So first of all, I'm fascinated. Like, how do you have time to do that? Because I assume it's a full-time role at Estu.
It is.
What I think it's also fascinating for people to just understand, like, what's going on in your mind when you think, okay, I'm going to now go and take this other full-time role. Just tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm now working full-time at Estu Global, which is ESTU, not S2.
Right.
That's its own issue, bless it. But working full-time at Estu as an innovation manager. So I've been brought in to create courses to support more people in taking design thinking into their organisations for impact. But what this means for my workflow and the things that I'm doing is that Helm Innovation sits as something that's passive for me now, where we have a licensing agreement with a great organisation. We have Josh Chidwick, who's the lead design engineer, who's leading on the testing part of things now. So making sure everything's going in the right direction. My job is just to maintain that, which doesn't involve much at this point.
Right.
The Cross Design Studio, we pick and choose when we bring contracts in. So there are certain things that come to us, which then we bring in specific people who are experts in certain fields to take on those things.
Mm-hmm.
And either Josh or I will work through those or will project manage them.
Yeah.
So at the moment, my focus is very much on S2, where Josh occasionally will have things that he'll bring in and that we'll work on, but very much light touch on my part.
Okay.
But as you can probably hear from this podcast, and I hope, for me, impact is a massive thing.
Yeah.
And scaling impact stage by stage really matters to me. So after looking at the tsunami impact, where thousands of people died, to then looking at the maritime industry, where tens of thousands of people are impacted, now looking at education as a forum for being able to increase that impact through other people, that's where I'm happy moving to. So I was pulled into the Royal College of Art to support some executive education work there with the likes of Rama Garawo, teaching creative leadership, so supporting him as well as supporting other programs. And it was just amazing to see the people come through that, what they take away from it and how they apply it. It's so exciting. I love to champion other people succeeding and support people in doing so. And that for me was another spark, another milestone moment. So moving into the education field just made sense. And Estu saw me at another program and another course and said, we need her. So thankfully brought me in. And we're creating really exciting courses, things that are getting people into creative careers in TV and film, as well as looking at commercial innovation, change leadership, all of these buzz areas. But the thread is always design, whether that's service design, design thinking, because it gets people to challenge what they know or what they think they know and go back to square one. So it's a really exciting place to be. And I'm glad to say lots of people are developing new things from it and come back to find new ways of innovating. But yeah, it's really exciting. But yes, I am constantly busy, but I love it.
Yeah. Amazing. So I think what's really clear, and I know you've got to get off to a workshop, as you mentioned. So I have one final question, but I think it's been very clear that purpose and helping people and having impact is at the core of what you are doing, whether it's with Helm Innovation, it's become something. It's, yes, you're not as involved now, but it's doing what it set out to be, that impactful kind of venture. You've got Cross Design Studio, which are projects that you're coming in and doing your consultancy as and when you can kind of choose the project, which is a nice, great place to be in as well. And then you've got the Estu side of things, so kind of giving back and providing that impact through education. So my closing question is, what's going to be the next thing for you? And I don't know if you know it, but I'd love to know, if you don't mind sharing, where do you think will be that fourth new pillar that you're going to open up?
Well, I've been pointed in the direction of policy before, which sounds like a impactful place to be, but I'm definitely not ready for that yet. I think there's a lot more to do before venturing in that direction. But no, I'd like to focus on helping more organizations and bigger companies in addressing what they're doing and why they're doing it and how they could be doing it better, whether that's for people, planet, accessibility, all of the things that really matter, getting them to go back to that really matters to me. But also looking at things like social mobility. It's a rough time at the moment for designers, yes, but for everyone. Cost of living crisis, the actually getting these jobs, these contracts, these projects. I speak about the Cross Design Studio, where it may sound like we get loads of projects through. That's not the case. We end up picking and choosing because we've also got other commitments. There are other things we're doing, but we're able to feed those back. So there's always things happening, but I don't want to create a facade for people that are really trying to push in industry. It's not easy. And for me, I've always diversified, and I hope that comes across. I've always looked at creating different options, different avenues, and never committed just to one output. As a creative, I like having that flexibility, but I would also say, as a piece of advice, embrace it. Look at different applications of your talent and what you enjoy doing. Some of them you might enjoy more than others, but it opens yourself up for lots of opportunities. And if you love what you do, get to work with great people, it's a great day. It's a great place to be. So embrace it.
Perfect. I think, I mean, I'm sure we'll have multiple coffees in the future. I think you've got a wonderful message, wonderful purpose. And like I said, I've always kind of admired multiple things that you're kind of working on. And I think there'll be a lot for you to share with others. And I think a lot of people will take that away from this episode as well. So Madelaine, I know you need to get to a workshop. Thank you so much for joining us. Are there any kind of websites that you quickly want to shout out that people could kind of, and we'll put them into the show notes, but as a closing thing, anything where people can go and read more about what you're doing?
Well, I would have to plug Estu on this, and I would have to say that there are various courses that we teach at Estu around different forms of design. And if you want to come and find out more about that, I'd say reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm a friendly person and I love to hear from people. So reach out to me, tell me what you're interested in, and I promise I'll share insights with you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Madelaine. Good luck with the workshop. And yeah, been wonderful having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to listening to the next person.